Welcome back to our next lesson. Thanks for all those that have been following through with us. All right, so we're up to this this exercise here where we've got a little bit to do today. All right, in these two exercises. If we have an extra lesson this week, we can have a look at our assignment work, but we'll have more time to do that come week 6 after we do the test. All right. Right, what we're going to talk about today is area of triangles and parallelograms. All right, the first thing we need to know about triangles, we'll discuss them first before we go on to parallelograms. Remember, a parallelogram is like a rectangle that's kind of pushed on the side like that. Sorry, that's badly drawn. That's supposed to be a straight line. That's what a parallelogram is. But we're dealing with triangles. What do we want to know about triangles? Triangles are basically half of a rectangle. You can see from our examples here that it's basically half of a rectangle. This sort of triangle here is pretty obvious to see. It's like the rectangle just divided into half. With these sorts of ones, you can physically draw it on a bit of paper. Even if you get an A4 sheet of paper and cut out that triangle shape out of it, you'll see that this bit is the same as that bit, and that bit's the same as that bit, and it's half of the rectangle. Now, if you remember when we did the area of a rectangle, it was length times width. Well, basically what we want is a half of this measurement because the area is going to be a half of that. But we don't talk about length and width in triangles. We talk about the base and the height, and that's the vertical height. You see we've got a little symbol down there which means it's a right angle or 90 degrees. So this dotted line, which is the height, goes straight up perpendicular to the actual base here. Okay, in these sorts of triangles like this one over here, that's a right angle there. So this becomes my height and this becomes my base. My formula is this bloke here: area equals a half base times height. That's what we need to remember. Let's try an example. This one here, 8 can be my base, 6 can be my height. All right, let's look at the setting out. Here we go. So, area of a triangle. Now, in this scenario here, we've worked out it as the area of a rectangle and then halved it. So they did the area of a rectangle here, length times width, and then halved it. Alternatively, and probably what's easier, is just to say area equals a half base times height. There's my formula. Keep my equal signs lined up. A half times, what is my base? 8. Times, what is my height? It's the other one, 6. Now there's a heap of ways you can do this. You could work out a half times 8. What's a half of 8? That's 4. 4 times 6. 6 fours are 24. It's measured in centimeters, square centimeters. Alternatively, you could say what's a half of 6? A half of 6 is 3. 3 times the 8 is 24. Or if you really want, you could go 6 times 8 and then divide it by 2 or halve it. So there's kind of multiple ways you can do it and you'll still end up with the same answer. If you follow your proper order of conventions, you'd work from left to right, but it doesn't really matter because you'll still end up with the right answer because it's all multiplication. Same with this guy here. Formula: half base times height. A half times 10 is my base because that's the number on the bottom there, times 4.5. Okay. Now, if you're not sure, you could just get your calculator and do it all. But you don't really need to. Half times 10 is 5. That's that bit there. Half times 10 is 5. 5 times 4.5. Like that. Okay. If you're not sure how to do him, 5 times 4.5. Let's just change my color. All right. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times the half part. What's a half of 5? It's 2.5. 20 plus 2.5 is the same as what I've got there. All right. Or otherwise, you could go 5 times 4.5 and do these sorts of multiplication. 5 times 5, 4 times 5. There's one decimal place, so you need one decimal place in your answer. All right. There's a few different ways that might revise what you did in primary school. Same with this one, it's done no different. Okay, this is my base. This is still my height, even though it's outside the triangle. That's still considered the vertical height of the triangle. All right, it's just a little bit different. Write your formula down. Substitute in 1/2 times 15 times 7. And this substituting I'm doing between here and here is exactly what we did at the end of the last unit in the algebra. Okay, so what have I got here? 15 times 7 is 105. And then halve it, so divide that by 2. Okay, what is my measured in? Centimeters squared. Notice how I worked that one out. I did the 15 times 7. All right. If you're not sure, 15 times 7 and then do all that business. 105, 7 5s, 35. 7 times 1 is 7 plus my 3 that I carried, 105. All right, that's what you did in primary school. 7 times 5 is 105. But then I want a half of it. What's half of 105? There he is there. Okay. And that's exactly them there. All right. The rest of them are all done the same way. You can have a go at them. All right. They're all done exactly the same way. Have a crack at all of those ones. This is exactly the same thing. Here's a triangular mainsail on a yacht. Here's my measurements, 48, 3.7. I'm going to multiply them together and halve it. And the same. All right, let's talk about parallelograms. So here's a parallelogram here. It's just like a rectangle, but pushed off to the side, like this little picture here. Note these little lines here and here mean that the length of these two sides is exactly the same. There's a little mark on that one and a little mark on that one, which means they're the same length as well. Just like a rectangle, the opposite sides are the same length. There's a video, I didn't mention it before, there's a video for the triangle explanation I did before that you can find in the linked files on the Google Sites page. There's also one here for the parallelogram. You can have a look at those. All right, parallelograms, very similar to a rectangle. What's the area of a rectangle? Length times width. It's the same scenario here. All right. If you think about this parallelogram here, if I took that triangle off there, it would fit in that little spot there. I have a length, I have a width, just like I did with my rectangles. All right. You could look at these as two triangles, just like that, base times height. So the area of this triangle is base times a half base times height. The area of this one's a half base times height. You can have a look at all this fancy algebra just here. But basically what we end up with is the area of a rectangle is base times height, which is just a version of length times width that we did there. We have a base for the rectangle, which is the long side of the rectangle, and we have this vertical height, which needs to be known as well. Let's look at an example. This one here. My base is this length here. My height is this vertical height here. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Area equals base times height. What is my base? 6.7. My height, 4.2. Put that in your calculator. Square millimeters. And the answer will be, I thought the answer was on the next slide, but it's not. But you could work that out. Same, more here to have a go at. All right, they're all done the same way. If we look at this parallelogram here, it'll be the same thing. Area equals base times height. Right, what's my base? Now, my height is obviously this one here because that is my perpendicular height there. All right, it is perpendicular or 90 degrees to this side here. That makes this my base that goes with that height. I don't need that number at all. It's just there to confuse me. So my base is 8. Substitute in. My height is 4. 4 times 8 square units. Okay. You can have a go at the tangram sort of activities there. All right, see how you go. All right. So we've dealt with areas of parallelograms. We've dealt with areas of triangles. We haven't yet discussed composite shapes. That comes in the next recording. But there's a lot of exercises to do there. So pick some of these ones out of these groups here. Once you're good with the first few ones, skip on to some of the harder ones. All right, thanks for coming.